Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Audrey Monkey, and I am your host. For more than 3 decades, I've been a summer camp director, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents. I really enjoy sharing stories, tips, and ideas to help others who care about young people raise a generation of kind, self-reliant, optimistic kids who become thriving adults. If you're interested in summer camp, parenting, or happiness, you've come to the right place. Reading has always been one of my favorite activities, and books are one of my favorite things to talk about. So in this episode, I'm thrilled to have Anne Driscoll, owner of Branches Books and Gifts, and a great longtime friend of mine, on the podcast. I hope you enjoy our episode where we talk about books, reading levels, and all kinds of other things related to our children and reading. I hope you enjoy the episode. Well, today I am thrilled to have my favorite bookstore owner, Anne Driscoll, with me. She owns Branches Books and Gifts in Oakhurst, California, which is right near Yosemite. Anne, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Why don't you tell people a little bit about Branches?
Okay, Branches is a general bookstore, and we've been open just a little over 5 years, and we carry everything from baby books to fiction, nonfiction, cookbooks, pretty much everything, and yeah.
Plus, you have so many good gift items, and that's what a lot of people love about your store. So you can come in and get a book, but you also have really pretty jewelry and flannel shirts and really funny socks.
Sassy socks.
Yeah.
That is a popular one. We also carry bras, which also is very scandalous, but, you know, they're cute and comfy, so.
Yeah, I love going into your store. It's the perfect place to get gifts. So anyway.
Thank you.
So we are, because you're a bookstore owner and you love books and I love books.
You do.
I do love books. I think I'm probably one of your best customers.
I think you may be the best customer I have, yes. You win the prize.
Oh, yes. Well, I've always had that problem. I'd rather shop for books than clothes, for sure.
Same.
Yeah.
If I didn't own it, I would be my best customer, too.
Yeah. You probably get some good deals. So we thought this is just such a fun time. I want to start having a regular podcast episode with you to talk about books and reading because it's one of our favorite topics.
It is. I love it.
So this is just going to be our first of hopefully many episodes about reading.
Yes, absolutely. We have so many things to share.
We do.
We have so many insights, so many books.
Yes, so many books, insights, wisdom. That's what we have.
So much wisdom.
So it's back to school time. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you have, what parents are coming into the store, what's going on with back to school stuff with reading?
Well, since, now it's Labor Day is past, so most everyone is back, but our school goes back right in the middle towards the beginning of August. So, it's really hard to, segue from summer to, oh my gosh, we have to get back into the swing of things with with school being back in. So a lot of people are coming in right now just asking for just books for their kids' reading level or books their child needs to have a certain number of books read by the end of the year or by the end of the quarter, or even they're just like doing book reports depending on what school system you're in. And so the challenge for us sometimes is just to make sure we're getting the right book into the hands of the child and the parent, because sometimes we have a little, the child wants something, the parent wants something else, and so we really try to encourage both of them to talk to each other. We just had a situation where a mom was saying to the little boy, oh, you're not going to be able to read that. And he was pretty adamant that, yes, he could read that level. And so I said, you know what, we have a little bench. Why don't you guys sit down for a second? Why don't you read the first couple pages together? And if he only needs help with a couple of words, probably that is a good challenge for him. Mm-hmm. And they ended up buying the book, and he was thrilled, and she was pretty excited because she didn't really realize that his reading level was that good.
Mm-hmm. I think that people can get a little too caught up in that number or whatever, the rating. We didn't even have that when we were kids, right?
No.
I don't think. I mean, I don't remember.
No, I just read all the time.
Right. We just read the books that we felt like
reading.
reading.
I didn't have to worry about it. Yeah.
So now there's this whole rating system or whatever, and depending on your school, they'll, say, oh, you should be reading level 5.3, which is like 5th grade, 3rd month or something
Correct.
like that.
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts on just like reading levels and how closely parents need to be concerned with like those numbers when they're picking out a book for their kid?
Got it. Okay. So when they're coming in and they have these, these levels that the teacher has either put on, given the kids, or they've tested into these levels. Sometimes the child will be very stuck on they want to read above the level, or they want a book that's, too low for their level. That happens a lot. Maybe they have a favorite series, but they're getting a little older. And so a lot of times I just suggest that maybe they go and talk to the teacher about, do you want them to be reading? Maybe they can read this book along with another book to challenge themselves, just to always, promote them reading, because I do think the levels get in the way, and then the kid's frustrated, the parents are frustrated, and they're basically just in there in a panic trying to get a book.
Right.
And it's a bummer to me because I'm like, oh no, it's taking away the pleasure and fun of reading. It's this stressor towards the end of, the quarter of the semester. We see it all the time. People are coming in, they're like, we have 2 days to read 15 points. And I'm going, oh my goodness, like that's really stressful for everybody. Right. So I think if you just communicate with the, teacher, and we also recommend using audiobooks as a tool. Mm-hmm. So if the child is having a little bit of a struggle with some of the words or some of the content, we recommend, download the audiobook for them to read and listen. Mm-hmm. And that helps like their levels grow really highly.
Right. We used that last year when my son was a junior in high school. He was in AP Lit.
Yeah.
Can't even remember which book it was, but it was like old English language, pretty difficult level. And we did that where I downloaded the audiobook and so by hearing the context and the tone of voice of the narrator,
yes, exactly,
you get the understanding better, and
Correct.
It kind of can raise your level, I would think, because you're experiencing like a more complicated level. Back to that whole AR thing, whatever. I just
accelerated reader.
Accelerated reader.
People that might not know, or maybe your listeners,
right?
It's similar to Lexile,
right? Okay.
Also.
So I think most schools do this now where they, test the kids and say, oh, this is your level or whatever, and then pick books, and here's the books that are at that level. Honestly, that whole point thing, it's funny because my older girls were the only ones who had a school that did that, and they loved it because they're big readers. So for them, it was just kind of fun. Like they were going to read
the readers,
anyway.
it's no big deal. They have 257 points
right, exactly.
in like a second. It's not a problem. And then they're reading these bigger books.
Right. And so they thought it was fun, but it's interesting because all the science and research now about what motivates people, actually that program is not a good idea. If you want people to learn to love to read, they should just pick up books they like, read them, and just be intrinsically motivated to read more because they like the book. So I wonder if for kids who are not feeling good about reading or who are testing at a lower level, if a program like that does the opposite of what we want.
It can be detrimental, I think.
And if people are stressing about it in your store, that's terrible.
Yes, and some people are very much, they are open to some ideas. They're open to like, oh, maybe get an audiobook or maybe, talk to the teacher. But some people are very much like, no, they have to stay within their reading level. And then the child is frustrated. So I truly gently try to encourage them to just, let the child read what they want to read.
Yeah.
Now, I also have come across where kids that have high reading levels, maybe they're a little embarrassed by how high their reading level is, which I know sounds strange. Or they have a friend that is at a lower reading level, so they'll read to the lower level to kind of be in solidarity with their friend. So then I have the whole opposite problem where people are coming in, they're like, well, they're only wanting to read these level 1, level 2 books because they're super fun, easy, fast.
Yes.
But these are like the, I can read books, they're level 1 or 2, and maybe they're a 4th grader. And, they're totally fun, but they can't take tests on them, and it's really not challenging them at all. So we try to just step them up, even if it's we have a lot of great, short story books where there's more just like quick bursts of these little stories so they can, kind of take it in a little easier and start.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I think part of it, though, like say you're in 1st grade, but your reading level is, say, 5th or something.
Right.
I wonder if some of the topics and things you're interested in are more the books closer to your grade level. Do you know what I mean? So it could be that kids are more interested if they want to read the picture books about dinosaurs because that's what they're interested in. I feel like, why not let them, maybe you also have them doing something else. But it's interesting how fixated we've become on this. Whereas I think when we were kids, no one knew. We just kind of progressively started reading different things.
Well, and it came about as a tool to help.
Right.
It was really just a tool to encourage kids and to help educators and librarians, I believe, to, get these reading levels up and to kind of understand where these reading levels were with these books. Because I mean, even kids that are in, higher level grades, it's hard to find a book that is above a 5th grade reading level because that is just, they're not written to a higher level anymore. Right. Most of the classics, Wuthering Heights or any of those are 12 plus, period. But then, some of my favorite books, like by John Green, like Fault in Our Stars, those fun, really great, young adult YA books, most of them 5th grade, maybe 6th grade level. Right. So it is hard. And then when you're back to your other, thought, the content of, you've got a 1st grader or a 2nd grader that is at this high reading level and they want to have these books, but then the content might get a little scary or a little bit too much. Right. A lot of people want to start Harry Potter. Early. But it gets scary, And so I always kind of tell them, it's going to be so much more enjoyable for you and your family if maybe you read it together. I would say age 8. That's kind of when the books start with him, I think. Maybe he's 11 when they start. I can't remember.
He's 10. Wasn't his birthday? He was turning 10 in the first
something
book?
Like that. Yeah,
something like in the first one. Hagrid finds him.
Yeah. So he's young, and so that's almost kind of how it's kind of good to read the books that way too. Because they do get progressively scarier. So you have to be careful with that
and know your kid too. Like, are they one that gets scared or whatever? But I still think
my kid was fine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, most of mine were too.
Yeah.
This has been. I think this is really helpful for parents to just be thinking about, first of all, don't make reading like all these other things. It's like a competition of trying to get your kid like the more points or higher levels. What you really want as an end result is for your kid to like reading. So maybe just help them pick out books that they want to read. Like let them lead the way. Go to the library together. Go to bookstores together and just have them poke them off the shelf. Read a few pages. Do you like it? Are you going to be interested in this?
I know. I always pull books when people are looking for books and both parties are getting frustrated. I will pull off a couple, just give them a really brief synopsis. Oh, okay. This is what you read last time. These are similar, but then these aren't similar. You might like this just because it's a pretty cool story and you might not have even heard about it. Because, we do stock a lot of the ones that are more popular from like the 70s or 80s that I personally love.
Like the Ramona and those ones and all that kind of
things
stuff.
like that.
Oh my gosh, Judy Blume.
Oh, I'm always pushing the Judy Blume. I know. And, Roald Dahl is always popular. Yes. So, they might not think to look at those because, you do have the series that are so popular and more the graphic novel books, which are also, they get a bad rap, but they're also really good for, reading levels. They truly are. My friend's son, he was having a horrible time and we got him on Diary of a Wimpy Kid. That's what he wanted to read. And, she was hesitant because it's kind of controversial, that's really not a book, it's this and that, but his reading level went up 3 grades within a year. Just because he was plowing through them and he loved them. And so I just think that that's proof right there.
Yeah, and then I think that's something that parents who have a reluctant reader,
correct,
which you said is oftentimes boys.
It is.
Just to find something like that, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, or one of those graphic, or even, I mean, I remember as a kid reading like the Archie comics and stuff. Really, if your kid's reading anything, it's good, right?
Well, I always think it's amazing. And this is also what helped me. My husband's mom is an educator, and, she's retired now, but he had a problem when he was little reading, and it really made her sad because she's an educator and she read to him constantly, but he was just having a hard time, and he wanted to read comic books, and she let him read comic books, and he's an amazing reader. He's almost like a speed reader now, and his reading level's fine. And so I just think that was amazing that even back in the day she was, smart enough to know, hey, let's just let him read whatever he's going to read.
Right. Yeah.
And, we have these great books. It's called Guys Read. It's a whole series. I think maybe I've given them to you before for your kids. I'm not sure, but they're all written, these short stories, and they're in different genres. There's horror, there's sci-fi, there's funny, comedy, humor, there's sports, but they're all by, Rick Riordan, really popular, young adult and kids authors, and they're all little short stories. And they love those. Because that's
good.
Not as daunting. Okay, I'm going to read one story a night, but then they end up plowing through all of it.
Right. That's so cool because they got caught up in it.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to so all these things we'll talk about.
Yes, we'll put a little link.
I'll put links to buy books from you if people want, but also just listings of all these books that we've talked about so that people
can... And if not me, near indie bookstore near you.
Yes. Side note, let's just have a little side commercial. I am now a very big supporter of independent bookstores. In fact, I've been visiting them whenever I'm traveling.
Yes.
Just to check them out.
That's my favorite hobby.
And see, I especially like how there's often, book reviews by people who work in there. And you have someone like you who is going to help you with your child pick a book, as opposed to in the larger bookstores or for sure Amazon. No one's going to talk to you there.
No.
So anyway, we love, side note, let's all support our independent bookstores. Okay, so we've talked about reading levels. We've talked about reluctant readers. Let's talk for a minute about some of your favorite young adult books, or anything new that's coming out, or anything that you think would be fun for parents to get for their kids. I know that a lot of my listeners have junior high age kids or that kind of age group. What are you hearing or that are like the best things that are really gripping kids and making them want to read?
Well, we have one of them that's really fun is Five Nights at Freddy's, and it's off of a video game, and those actually are pretty popular. A lot of things with Pokemon or anything with that, and they have all these graphic novels and all this stuff now. They love it, and so that's really popular, and I keep them, and they do well. Anything, well, right now, this is more for 8 to 12, but, honestly, the older ones like it too. There's a whole new series called Dog Man.
Oh, okay.
And that's been really popular. That's the 5th one just came out, and they're just, gobbling that up, so that's fun. But there's a lot of really cool, like anything that's in a movie or anything that's on Netflix. I mean, we just make sure we have it. There's, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, that's a really huge one right now. That's fun.
Yeah.
But the one that always is popular that I just think is amazing, if you have like a good reader, and there is a lot of kind of in-depth content to it, but The Book Thief.
Oh my gosh, I love that book. I read it as an adult, didn't even know it was supposed to be a young adult book, honestly.
Yes, right.
Like, I just heard that it was a good book.
I prefer young adult books. Let me just say that right now, people.
I know. I actually really like them as well.
Yeah, they're just good.
Yes, they're good. That is such a good book. The Book Thief, that is one of my favorites. I'm trying to think.
It is constantly. We've been open a little over 5 years, and it's always been on the bestseller list.
Yeah.
It moves around on the shelf from 3 to 5 to 10 to 3 to whatever, but it's always on there. And
so good.
Yeah.
So good. And you know what's fun about those kind of books is they're good for adults and for kids. And so it's fun to read them together.
Absolutely.
You don't even have to read them actually together, but if you're both reading them. And I think another book that has been recently like that for my family is Wonder.
Yes.
And I'm sure, I know that's a bestseller too. Wonder is one of those books.
Amazing.
And I have to say, I credit Wonder with one of my kids who was a reluctant reader. That was the first book he really loved.
Yes.
It was several years ago, I don't know, probably when it came out. And I remember that was the first moment where it was like reading for fun. Like you
What
wanted to
about
keep
you?
reading?
What do you feel like was your book? Mine
was-
was Wrinkle in Time. Like when I feel like I really was like, wow, that book was amazing. You know what I mean? When I was really young. Can you think of it?
Well, I remember really loving Harriet the Spy, which is so funny.
No, I love Harriet the Spy. We still sell that. It's so good.
Somebody recently posted there was something going around Facebook, like, what's your favorite book from when you were a child? And this person, she's like, older sister of a good friend of mine from high school. She posted a picture of Harriet the Spy, and I was like, I had to comment like, oh my gosh, me too.
Yes.
I wish I could remember. First of all, I loved all the Judy Blume books. I read through, I think, all of those. I thought they were so racy and like, when you're in middle school.
Scandalous.
It was so scandalous and all that. Loved those.
Yeah. God forbid you got your hands on a copy of Forever.
Right. Oh gosh, yes. Before
all the parents were alerted. There's like probably PTA meetings in the 70s about that. Don't let your kid read that.
Banned books. Yeah.
Oh, it's banned books week at the end of the month. Yep. That perfect topic.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
But Harriet the Spy. Oh yeah, we will do that. That'll be our next one. Harriet the Spy was before that though. Obviously I was reading that, and I know I must have done all those Ramona and Beverly Cleary.
Yes.
All the Roald Dahl books I read. All the
love.
E.B. White books. Charlotte's Web. Stuart Little.
There's a Roald Dahl book, and it's called SEO Trot.
Okay.
But basically, backwards, it's tortoise.
Oh,
and
okay.
It's actually like, it is kind of racy, but it's hilarious. It's about this man who lives in this apartment building, and his downstairs neighbor, he loves her, and she has a little turtle, but until the little turtle grows, she won't go on a date with him. And so he devises this scheme, and it's hilarious. I sat there and read it one afternoon when I was bored, and there was nobody in the store. It was super fasted, but it's kind of like, it's kind of spicy. Not that you would know it if you were a kid, but he loved her, and it was so funny. Oh my gosh. So anyways, Roald Dahl, always amazing.
Well, and I think those books, it's interesting because I think a little bit now maybe people sometimes want to shield their kids from like sad stories or ones with tragic, but those were some of the ones that I feel like I learned a lot from, like read like Charlotte's Web.
Those are the ones that you stick like, with you.
Yes.
Have you heard of the one and only Ivan?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that is younger. That is probably, I would say, 6 to 9. It's lower grade, but it's the most beautiful story. It's Catherine Applegate, One and Only Ivan. It's based on a true story. It's about a gorilla that lived in this mall zoo in Seattle. I think Seattle. I know Washington.
So it's like a true story.
It's a true thing that happened, and she made this story about it. She made the gorilla named Ivan, and he basically sets out to save his new little friend Ruby the elephant, this little baby elephant, from living in this mall zoo, because he thinks she needs a better life. And he's an artist, and he's just a very deep thinker. And I just cried and cried and cried. It was beautiful.
Okay, well I'm gonna have to read that one.
And I just recently, you need to listen to it.
Okay,
I think audiobook it.
Okay, I will totally do that. Okay, well, so that brought us to one other thing that I forgot we want to talk about, which pretty much my favorite thing as a parent was when my kids got to an age where I could read them one of my favorite books aloud.
Oh, yes,
and so
100%.
I'm a huge proponent of reading aloud. When my oldest daughter, who's now 24, was a baby, I read this book.
She's 24?
Yeah. She'll be 25 in January. I know.
Happening?
This life. That's what's happening. Anywho.
Okay, all right, that's all right.
So this is like in the 90s.
Sorry.
And of course, I love to read. And I really credit my love of reading to my mother reading aloud to me.
Me as well.
Constantly when I was a kid.
Me as well.
And so when my daughter was little, I read this book that I ended up at the time, I used to give it to people when they had a baby. It was by Jim Treeley's The Read Aloud Handbook. And we just looked it up before the podcast.
Yes.
I guess it's like million bestseller.
Right.
It was written in 1982. And the book talks about it gives ideas for different ages of what to read. And it just talks about how amazing reading aloud.
Yes,
so
I had to get this in the store immediately.
Yeah, I think so. Yes, for sure. And what it teaches is kids will learn to read eventually. Like some learn when they're 3 or 4, some when they're 7. It doesn't really matter developmentally when they read. But if you are constantly reading aloud to them from when they're a baby all the way through, you can literally still read aloud to kids who are 14 years old. I know this from camp. They will learn to love reading before they can even read. And that's how you learn to love reading. Because to be honest, those reader books are kind of boring and lame.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? When you're first reading, like the dog ate the blood, whatever.
Right.
Like those are not very interesting books, but oh my gosh, have, Harriet the Spy read aloud to you.
Or Little House on the Prairie.
Yes. Oh gosh.
I mean, on the banks of Plum Creek or on the shores of Silver Lake.
Those.
I know. I still sell those like crazy because I'm a pusher.
Yeah.
Pusher.
Also, I will tell you my first series was the Chronicles of Narnia. I don't remember how old I was, but I still love those so much. And I ended up reading those aloud to my kids. So the books that I read aloud, that I remember reading aloud to my kids, Chronicles of Narnia, Huckleberry Finn, which had some crazy racy language, which I didn't realize until I got to it.
Right, and then you're reading and you have to censor.
Or stop and explain.
Right.
Like, wow, some of these words were used and, you don't say them anymore because they're very offensive, but this was the language that was used. And, anyway, so Huckleberry Finn, when you were talking about Harry Potter, my oldest daughter, again, so when the Harry Potter books were coming out, I think I read the first 3 out loud to her when she was around 9 or 10. And then she was kind of off on her own and read the rest of them.
Yeah.
Kind of as they came out. I think they were still coming out back then.
Yes, they were.
I actually didn't even read them all, the rest of them. I went back and reread the first 3 and read all of them like last year.
Oh, they're so good. I remember like when the last one came out, we were up at camp when it came out because it always comes out on his birthday. It usually would come out on July 31st, right?
Yes.
Or right around that time frame. And we were all racing to read it because, certain people, Sushi, was trying to spoil it. And I was like, well, I'm 3 pages ahead of you, so don't even start with me.
Isn't that fun? I love that whole, that there's a certain joy in, waiting for a series to come out.
Yes, I know. That was once in a lifetime.
Fun.
I hope we see it another
I know. I hope we do too, because that would be really cool.
That whole thing that you're saying about can't wait to read these books or letting your kids read what they want to read. Mm-hmm. It can be sometimes I have a ton of people that come in and the kids want to get stuff that I know there's content in there. There can be, I love John Green. I love John Green books. He has written some of the most amazing books, but it has, homosexuality or, I don't think, probably sexual assault at some point in one of them, or that has happened to some of the characters, or, there's just a lot of content in there. And some people, you just need to make sure, that you're telling them, hey, this is kind of the stuff that happens in these books. But I just want to let you know, a huge one. We should definitely talk about this, 13 Reasons Why. That was a huge thing because, I've read it. I watched the show with my daughter because I wanted to make sure I knew what she was watching because I knew it was going to be controversial. And then people were coming in and, they have their 12-year-olds that want to read this because it's on Netflix and they've already started watching it. And, I'm always kind of the bearer of, interesting tidings, depending on which side you're on. Sometimes the kid will be like, no, I'm fine to read it. And I'm like, well, I just want to let your parents know because I don't want to give them something that maybe they might not be.
Yeah, and I think that falls under the category of you might want to read or listen to it yourself first.
Exactly.
If your kid is younger, until they're kind of older, I feel like you know your child and what's going on with them and can they handle this, how they're going to deal with it. But I really think, I know that's a lot to ask parents, but I think either reading it with them so that you're talking about the content or reading it ahead of time to make sure you're comfortable with it before they read it. Because you're right, there's a lot of racy stuff. In fact, side note, I'm listening to an audiobook right now that I got through you, Libro FM. It's called Tailspin. And it's Sandra Brown, and it's the bestseller. Well, the reason I'm mentioning it is because it is this whole adventure kind of, the story and about, it's an intrigue and whatever.
Right.
But it has the raunchiest sex scenes. And I'm listening to this audiobook, and I'm like, why is this in the middle of this book?
I don't have children in the car, right?
Yes. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I did not pick up 50 Shades of Grey here. I did not realize that that's what I was getting. But again, it's oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. It's a novel. It's clearly being sold as, whatever, a fiction novel for adults. But I'm just thinking oh my goodness, there is a lot of just kind of, and it's not necessarily labeled, and not that we can protect our kids from everything, but there are times it's so funny because my daughter's now read them, but what is that series that I read, the Swedish
Family Moomin Troll.
No, those ones that they're for adults, but they're that series about the girl, she's covered in tattoos, it's really
the
violent.
Girl with the dragon tattoo.
The girl with the dragon tattoo. Okay, so that series, of course, I read it all the way through. You and I have this love for those really kind of crazy,
right?
Kind of, what are they called? Psychological thrillers.
Sharp Objects in Dark Places.
Gillian Flynn. You and I have this. Okay. However, when I read those, I think it was my 16-year-old daughter at the time wanted to read. I'm like, no, and no. It has like horrible sexual assault and all this stuff. But of course, now that she's 24, she gets to read whatever she wants.
Now you're like, you got to read these, girl.
No, but it's an interesting thing. I mean, you don't want to be like censoring so much, but I think when you're talking about a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old, they already have so much going on. We don't need to add to the psychological problems by having them read something that's so disturbing or brings up too many things that are going to upset them.
Well, there's triggers. Definitely. That's why 13 Reasons Why was such a thing. And another big one, this is like, 10 years ago, but Hunger Games.
Oh, right.
My daughter wanted to read Hunger Games when she was 10.
Right.
And I mean, we talked about it. I had read it. I mean, I actually read that a couple times because I loved it so much.
Right.
Because it is such an amazing series. But I was like, so I always just say, look, there's some stuff in there, so I want you to talk to me. But some people would come in and ask about it, and so I would just kind of tell them what was going on. Or they would just already have this preconceived notion of, like, it's violence against kids, and I don't want anybody to read it, and it's true. But also, I try to say, well, maybe you should read it.
Yes. And just,
so you can kind of make a decision for yourself, because you do know your child the best.
Right.
And they might, they might really love it. And they they deal with a lot of stuff at school and on the internet that has made them, unfortunately, a little bit more aware of things than, our generation, or even like you're saying, even your 24-year-old, I mean, things that she didn't deal with, they're now dealing with.
I know. And I was actually just thinking, like, there is something fortunate about having books come out slowly at the right age for you.
Right.
Like now these series like Harry Potter's all the way out. So like, when you're 10 years, so it's just like, it's really just being aware of that. I also though think, I don't know if you feel this way, I feel like anything you tell a kid not to read, boy, wouldn't that just make you want to read
100%.
it more?
Well, you know me.
Especially
I would
if you're
totally
like 13.
read it. I'd be like, I'm reading it right now. That forever. I was like, I'm getting it, and I'm going to hide it, and I'm going to read it for sure. Well, and there's these books out called Milk and Honey and the Sun and Her Flowers. Have you heard of these? It's poetry books, but she's really popular on Instagram.
Okay.
And they are full of they're beautiful, beautiful poems. And I mean, she does a little drawing with them, and she posts all these things on Instagram. And so they just blew up. It's like one of the best-selling poetry books. I mean, it's, there's just not best-selling poetry books real quick anymore.
No.
This is just like blown out. And so now there's all these new poetry books. One's called the Princess Saves Herself in this one, or The Witch Doesn't Die in this one. And it's just all about like women empowerment and these kind of things. But there is some stuff in there that is, like you're saying, these books are like really spicy. And so, these parents are coming in, they're getting them for gifts for their kids, because the kid's like, I saw it on Instagram. And I was like, FYI. Right. So you don't come back and kill me. Right. This is what's going on. Right. So.
Yeah, because like books don't. But you know what I'm thinking as we're talking about? Like, first of all, for whatever reason, I feel like reading something in a book is not the same as seeing it in a movie. And that was one reason why, like, when I was reading Hunger Games, I really liked the books. But I remember when the movies were coming out, I was like, I don't know. Like, I was one thing letting your kid read a book about something versus, like, seeing the visual of, like, violence and that kind of thing. I don't know. I think we're, like you said, we're in an interesting time, and our kids are unfortunately exposed to a lot of stuff. So I feel like with books, we either want to read with them, preview, but I don't think we want to get into a thing where we're like, don't read that, because I don't know.
Well, I agree. I've always felt like that.
Yeah.
And like it's, it's sometimes controversial in my store,
Right.
Sometimes people don't appreciate it,
Right.
Because I'm like, well, you need to let them, and I try to do it where I'm not completely saying it where the kid is present, like be defiant to your parent, but I'm kind of trying to encourage the parent, like, let them try it, be present with them. And I do think that is such a great opportunity to have this quiet time that isn't on the computer. Like, people are always asking me, okay, you just obviously like books better. I do like books better. And I'm talking about the physical paper copy of a book, because my phone's going off all the time. I'm on the internet all the time. I'm always on the computer. I'm doing stuff at the store all the time. Like, it's just relaxing. Right. It's just a nice grounding thing to to be able to do together.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That they will always appreciate
Right.
and remember. So, I mean, I am
Right.
always pushing that.
Yes. Oh, me too. Okay. Well, this has been terrific. We've talked for quite some time. We will definitely do it again.
We can talk all. So
we could go even longer, but we will wait. I think we'll do another episode.
We'll just give you more later.
Yes.
Because we want it.
Yes. Anyway, thanks for joining me today, Anne.
It is my pleasure.
And
I adore you.
I will put links in the show notes to branches and all the wonderful books and
All
things
the
that we talked
things.
about. All these
Yes.
things. Okay. Thanks for being here today.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the podcast. I had a great time talking with my friend Anne. For notes and a big list of all the books we talked about, visit my website at sunshine-parenting.com and search for episode 55. While you're there, if you don't already subscribe to my weekly emails, I'd love to have you join the Sunshine Parenting community so that I can send you out news and updates about new podcasts, blog posts, and other parenting articles and books that I find out there in the world interesting. I'm going to leave you with some words from Jim Treeley's, author of the Read Aloud Handbook. When we read to a child, we're sending a pleasure message to the child's brain. You could even call it a commercial, conditioning the child to associate books and print with pleasure. There are, however, displeasures associated with reading and school. The learning experience can be tedious or boring, threatening, and often without meaning. Endless hours of worksheets, intensive phonics instruction, and unconnected test questions. If a child seldom experiences the pleasures of reading, but increasingly meets its displeasures, then the natural reaction will be withdrawal.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.